As you know, it's been my strong view for a long while that governments around this country have been draconian, heartless and insensitive when it comes to border closures and quarantine. We all know the importance of keeping COVID-19 under control. That is not a matter for dispute. But we also know the response needs to be proportionate. There will be infections. Something like 98% of them are mild or even asymptomatic. They don't make people sick, but we've got to be realistic. There's going to be infections, and we should be prepared, of course, when it comes to quarantine, to make exemptions when there are good reasons, because it's about the proportionality of the risk and the response. You're about to meet Kristy Colakidis and her daughter Sammy, who suffers from a rare disease. They are stuck in quarantine in Sydney for another 5 days on their way home to Melbourne from crucial medical treatment overseas. I spoke with them earlier today. Kristy, it's so good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us with Sammy. I wonder if you could start off by just telling us about Sammy's condition and how she's bearing up at the moment.
So Sammy is 5 years old. She was diagnosed with neuroblastoma when she was 3.5. So that's a rare childhood cancer, which is really hard to treat. So we have been attending a clinic in the USA for maintenance treatment for Sam. So she's currently in remission, but because it is a cancer that's likely to relapse, we're doing everything in our power to try and help her stay in remission.
Absolutely. The good news is that even with quarantine borders and restrictions on overseas travel, you were able to go to North Carolina in the US for the latest treatment?
Yeah, that's right. It took a lot of paperwork to get the approvals and COVID tests in order for us to travel. And we did everything in our power to ensure that we quarantined ourselves while we're over there. However, we run into the trouble every time we do travel, which is every 3 months at this stage, in quarantine in Australia. So we do run into the issue of not getting back into the country. And then the quarantine process itself is really ill-equipped for immunocompromised children.
It just seems extraordinary because you're from Melbourne, you're at the moment quarantining in Sydney. You obviously applied. You asked to see whether you could go home and quarantine at home because of Sammy's condition and your special circumstances.
Yeah, that's right. So we had trouble getting flights into Australia and we could only access a flight to Sydney. So that meant that we were quarantining in Melbourne in Sydney. So the whole time I've been upfront with everyone about Sammy's needs. We've done quarantine twice now, and we've found each time the nurses are unable to support her. So as you can see, she's got an NG tube. She has blood count issues, so she's requiring blood tests all the time. And no matter what we put forward to the government, they're not listening to any of the words that I've shared with them. So they've always asked for the backing of medical teams. I've sent them letters from oncology teams in the US and our team from the Royal Children's Hospital. We've also had the notes from the Sydney Children's Hospital advising that she'd best be treated in Melbourne as well with her treating team. When we were here back in November, the oncology unit thought she was relapsing, and they said to us, "What are you doing in New South Wales? We don't have access to your records. We don't have access to your scans. We really can't help you. You really need to be back in your Melbourne treating team." And even though I conveyed this to New South Wales government and also the Victorian government, it literally fell on deaf ears.
It is just extraordinary that they wouldn't make this exception. They allow you to quarantine at home in Melbourne, to be close to your normal doctors, to be close to family and the best possible care. Of course, Sammy's playing very happily while we chat. How's she coping with this situation? How keen is she to get home?
Well, she's desperate to get home. So Sammy is actually an identical twin. They have such a gorgeous bond. When Sammy was at the real depths of being really sick, her sister would carry her feed machines for her.
Did you just say you're not sick anymore, Sammy?
What did you do with cancer? What did you do to its butt? Did you kick its butt? No? What did you do? Oh, she's gone shy now.
Fantastic stuff.
So we even found during her normal treatment, they sent her home to be with her family because they knew that she recovers faster when she's around us. So unfortunately, New South Wales and Victoria governments have not cared about any of the emotional wellness of the child. They haven't put any of that forward. Even myself crying on the phone as a desperate mother begging for help, it's literally fallen on deaf ears. They sort of just said, look, you're too much of a risk and we can't transfer you. So when
Kristy, you've done this twice, though. Of course, you've got days of quarantine still to go, but we've got to sort this out because you'll be going back to the US again and you'll have to do quarantine again. This surely is an exemption. The risk here is so minimal. The risk is the infinite possibility that maybe one person in Melbourne could get infected from COVID if you brought it back. But you've tested negative. As you say, you're being very careful. And that's such a moderate risk compared to the benefit of her being at home with her doctors.
Well, Chris, let me tell you, it's really disturbing that as a partnership here, I've advocated for her the whole time. We've kept her safe, we've kept her protected. But every step that we've taken in this whole quarantine journey each time, we're being pushed back. She's not getting the treatment she needs. We're finding hotel quarantine is not equipped for immunocompromised children. I asked them to listen to her chest with a stethoscope. They actually looked at each other and said, do we have one? Then when I spoke to a nurse manager, she said, look, we don't really use them. It's something the doctors use. We wouldn't be able to do that for you. I've been asking all week to have blood tests done on her. They said they actually can't do it. After I mentioned we'll be talking to you guys today, suddenly they're moving mountains to be able to do it.
And Kristy, but you're expecting to have to go through this again in 3 months.
That's right. So we were told by the New South Wales quarantine exemption team that they're going to try and put something in place for us so that we can have a bit of an easier transition. When I did call them to follow up with everything, they're not taking my call. They said they'll email me and I haven't received an email. Well,
we are going to keep on your case, Kristy, because this is a classic example where there should be some leniency, should be some exemptions for common sense. Thanks so much for sharing your time with us today, Kristy, and thanks to Sammy too.
Thank you so much, Chris. I just want to add that maybe the government needs to rethink putting children like Sammy, in her case, in hotels with COVID-positive people and putting her at a higher risk, and let us quarantine at home where we know the best way to take care of her. So
exactly.
Thanks, Chris, so much, honestly, for listening to us and taking the time to talk to us.
Honestly, why wouldn't you have exemptions for a family and a little girl like that?